So let's start with compensating wage differential. What questions might you have on CWD? Let me point a couple of things out that I want to make sure you're very clear on. So if this is an ISO profit curve, and this is an ISO quant, which one is reflective of the firm's condition? And which one is reflective of the consumer's condition? There's a hint in there by their titles.
Profit will be the firm's, correct?
Right, exactly. In which case, we're suggesting the firm can spend money on wages, or the firm can spend money on some benefits for the employee. And these benefits we're going to think of in terms of benefits in the workplace itself, not benefits as in wage, vacation, health insurance, etc. But we think of benefits as being risk mitigation. Okay? So if I'm in a cleaner workspace, it costs the company something to keep it clean. If I'm in a bright, lit, air-conditioned workspace, it costs the company something to do that, right? And the company will have the same amount of profit at any point along this curve. They can spend all their resource available for this to wages, or all of it to benefit, but they'll be along this curve, right? And the worker has an indifference curve, and the worker's utility is the same at any point on this indifference curve. And the worker and the firm tend to match up in an employment relationship, offer and acceptance, as the worker's isoquant or indifference curve is tangent to the firm's isoprofit. If the firm's isoprofit had to move out because the only workers available had an isoquant that was also out further, this is suggestive, when we go out more to benefit and higher to wage, that the utility or satisfaction of the worker is greater, right? Is the profit of the firm greater or less as we move out into the right in wage and benefit space? Let's assume that this isoprofit curve was at the economic profit maximization condition of profits equaling 0. If we are spending more on wage and or risk mitigation, unless revenue has changed, then the firm, and as we go out and to the right, profits fall, right? We spend more, absolute increase in revenue, profits fall. If we have a curve, isoprofits in the left, then, and if there's a tangency here, then profits have risen. But we're getting some lesser combination of wages and benefits for the worker, so their satisfaction and utility is less. So be able to think about this and be able to think about wage and benefit space separate from wage and risk space. What does my isoprofit curve look like in wage and risk space? It was downward sloping into the right in wage and benefit space. What do we think? Yeah, so it's upward sloping, right? Because I can spend money on wages, or I can spend money, I can spend money on risk. I'm saying it's going to be something, I'll give it a slope, just because I prefer that. I can spend money on wages, or do I spend money on risk? The riskier it is, the less I spend, right? So we have this kind of a curve relationship. And the workers' curve then looks like this. And ISO simply means the same. So on the indifference or the isoquant curve, the quantity of utility for the worker is the same at any point. And on the isoprofit curve, the profit for the firm is the same at any point. And you're already familiar with the likelihood of seeing some kind of equation that defines either or both curves, right? What if I said something like worker utility is equal to leisure times risk plus wage? That would be suggesting that workers earn utility from an interaction between leisure and risk plus some wage, right? And if you're given various values for, let's say, firm A, B, and C, some values for leisure, risk, and wage. Let's say leisure is 8, risk as a factor of 0.4, excuse me, that is B. Risk has a factor of 0.4 and wage is 1,000 versus a firm scenario where leisure is 6. So apparently you're working, 10 hours a day. And risk is 0.6, so it's a higher level of risk, but you earn greater wage. We can then put these values into this equation to come up with a level of utility, and fairly quickly we can identify which of the combinations is going to have the greater utility for the worker, right? So there might be a production function, production equation of some kind that helps us understand how we produce utility. And there might be inputs, and you may have to think it through. That's part of the compensating wage differential construction. It's not immediately modeled here necessarily, but we've got wage and risk modeled, right? Here we have included leisure as a function, so we're in a 3-dimensional model that you've not been responsible to think about a 3-dimensional graphic model, right? Nor will you be for our example. But you should be able to think through some numbers that might result in a 3-dimensional construction. Okay? What other questions would you have about compensating wage differentials? What's the basic concept? Yeah, Nick?
So more or less, it's something like it's a benefit in a job that isn't necessarily wage, but it might be a good environment. It might be something that you want to do. That's the compensating wage differential.
Okay, so the example might be, you and I have the exact same skill set. We are equally as skillful workers at a particular function. And in a competitive labor market, you would expect that we would receive the same level of overall wage and benefit compensation. I accept $5,000 a month and a nice contribution to my 401k, new, clean, Class A work environment, there's lunch available 2 days a week, all these niceties. And by the way, that health care plan is just killer. Never have to worry about it. You, on the other hand, are in an old, decrepit building downtown where, against the law, they allow people to smoke inside, and maybe you're a non-smoker and don't appreciate that. You don't have much of a health care plan, but they're paying you $12,000 a month. On the surface of it, it looks like we're being paid differently, right? He's getting 12, I'm getting 5. But the sum of all of my package and the sum of all of his package in a competitive work environment, labor market, may well be the same thing. But he gains utility more from money than condition, and so he chose that job. I gain utility more from condition than money, so I chose my job. That's a compensating wage difference example. Okay?